to Perimenopausal Athletes and Beyond, a masterclass series bringing together experts in mindset, nutrition, training, recovery, and mindfulness. Today, I have the beautiful Charlotte Thaarup coming all the way from where I am, the other side of the world, in New South Wales. Welcome, Charlotte. I'm so glad that you could be here.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you for including me.
Well, when we first talked, it was coming together, and it was just, we just kept talking. And so I was anticipating this interview and sharing your voice and what you have to say, but I'm first going to just tell everybody that's listening a little bit more about you. So here we go. And this is really amazing. So you are an internationally experienced clinical mindfulness consultant and transformative educator. So those are all the big words, but really what matters is that you've been doing this for a really long time, for 15 years, and actually are in your practice, what you've developed in terms of your programs and leadership and for the workplace, and has actually been used, and you've been training psychologists with this work. And now they're actually even using the work in studying your programs and the efficacy and how it works and how it enriches people's lives. I'm not exactly sure, but can you just tell us a little bit more about that and how it has been that you've just kept going and expanding what it is you do in this work of mindfulness and tying together the science and this ancient practice that exists here?
Yeah. I have a background in mediation and adult education. So how do we facilitate change, really? And about 15 years ago, I was looking for something that was better than the traditional Western way of seeing human life. Because I kept feeling that what I was teaching, which is the traditional sort of coaching model, if you like, it wasn't good enough. It's still based very much on goal setting and that delusion that once you get to your goal, then everything falls into place. And I thought, it's just not true. There were so many things that I thought, our Western way of seeing the world is just not actually matching reality. So I was looking, and when I came upon mindfulness, I went, now we're talking. And then, of course, it's been a maturing process for me to take it on as well, right? Because in the beginning, I was just, oh, it's so exciting. And I thought, we've got to get it out to everybody. We've got to get it to psychologists because they have all these touch points and they could be much, much better at their work if they use that. So that was then, and also it was part of their professional development. So it was an easy kind of pick. And we did it as Bali retreats, which was really lovely. And really, to be honest, the more I dived in, the more excited I got. And then I also thought, well, one of the biggest challenges in mindfulness is actually doing the mindfulness practice. And so if we put it into the workplace where there is a commitment, a social commitment to it, it's more likely that people will actually practice. And so that's what we're seeing. I think there is, if people are very desperate and they come and they want to change, then they're going to do the practice for a while at least. Yeah. But those who have sort of medium motivation, if they do it in a workplace and everybody else, including the boss, is sitting down to do the mindfulness training, it's much more likely everybody will do it. And then you'll get the results.
Well, and you're bringing this right into the Newcastle University's new executive MBA program as well. So you're not just going to the workplaces, you're getting them before they even get there now, which is even more brilliant.
And it's so precious because the repeated feedback from that, because we actually do it as the foundational module is mindful leadership of that program. And repeatedly people say, that without that they could not have completed it because they're all execs and then taking on additional study, and many of them young families. So they keep saying that's what kept us grounded and sane and enjoying it, and able to manage ourselves when we kind of felt overwhelmed and we can't do it, etc. Which is just so lovely to hear, right? That it makes a difference. Also, they will say, we wish we had right at the beginning of this. So that's why, ongoingly doing it in the workplace is such a meaningful thing to do.
Absolutely. And this is what's so interesting and why why I first approached you and said, would you be part of this masterclass series, is because, I mean, it's so holistic, right? Like mindfulness, and how, if you think of it, the work you do in the workplace. And I was listening to, as you know, I was listening to one of your lectures, can I say, or talks, I guess, that you have on your website. And I was just like, man, we can apply all of this idea of leadership in work, and then leadership of our life. So let's get into it. Let's go. Are we ready? Okay. So let's start right with this whole idea of, what is the role of mindfulness in sport?
And perhaps that's even, what is the role of mindfulness in life, right? If we start even there.
Bigger.
Because, yeah, and I think, it is interesting, the Buddha, who's the one who kind of came up with the idea of mindfulness practice, it is the heart of the Buddhist practice. So the Buddha, and the word Buddha just means awake. It just means I'm aware, I'm knowing that I'm not just my emotions or my feelings, but actually there's something that's observing it, that's kind of awake.
Right.
So he was around about 2,600 years ago. And that means that there are some things that haven't changed for we humans in a long, long time. However, they have gotten a lot worse. We are looking we are sitting in a stress soup, in a competition soup, it's very, very, it's extremely stressful with the big issues, isn't it? Around climate change, around war, around COVID. We are sitting in that. And then many of us have internally as well, very hectic life, even just, for many, just paying the mortgage, making sure that actually, we can be okay. So there's an incredible amount of stress. And in that we become very reactive, and we're not living the best version of ourselves, because when we're in that, it's easy that empathy falls offline, the big picture falls offline, ability to focus is damaged, and we are much more vulnerable also to mental unwellness, which is, of course, what we're seeing in the extreme.
Yeah.
So if we say, well, this is the soup we're sitting in, that means that whether you're an athlete or you're not, you're going to need some way of actually coming back home, coming back into, yeah, life's good. And I notice the sun, and I notice the beautiful flowers, and I notice your smile, and yeah, I'm a human being with all my capacity online, not just as a little survival human, right? So that's sort of the big picture. And then coming into saying, well, we have kind of two operating systems within the body. We have the parasympathetic, I'm sure your listeners will know about this, and the sympathetic, right? Yes. And so the sympathetic is the activation state, and it's also the one that's activated as soon as we're feeling some level of stress. And that can be just, COVID. It's not necessarily personal. It's just that sense of, I'm not really safe. And so as soon as that happens, we're living in that sympathetic state. And the problem with that is, let's just focus on athletes, but also others, is that the body can't heal. It can't regenerate. It can't, it's not coming. It can't come into healing itself, if you like, when we're in that state. Yeah. And so that means if you've been out there performing and you actually need some cell repair and maintenance when you come back, if you're still going, your body can't actually heal from that perspective, from that place. Right. So therefore, mindfulness, of course, is known through, there are hundreds of thousands of research articles on this. And there was actually a huge meta study that was done not so long ago by a very well-respected journal that collated about 44 major studies on mindfulness, comparing mindfulness and other interventions in mental and physical well-being. And mindfulness outperformed all of them, right? Even cognitive behavioral therapy, all of those, for the sake of well-being, right? So it is a way for us to come into calm, into kindness, into being more aware, more responsive versus just reactive. And it's a way for our bodies to start to recover, to start to feel, yes, it's okay, I'm safe. Because it's from that not safe that we run into trouble. We don't perform as well and we don't recover.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. where I want to go is before we get, because of course it brings me up to like, okay, so what are all the tools? Like, what do I need to do? Like, that is
Yes.
so typical of even just a response in terms of what we think. Like in my head is like, okay, so I want the tools. Okay, yeah, I need to breathe more. I need to do this. But I want to actually step back and say, okay, so where are we as athletes? Where do we need to make a shift in even thinking about mindfulness in terms of the push and the pull and the retreat, and where can we go just from a bigger level before we even want to say, okay, here are your tools?
Yes, good, really good question. And you're right. We tend to just jump in and go, okay, how can I just fix that then? Yeah. Which, in our previous conversation, we said that's the masculine way of operating, isn't it? There's a problem, let's fix it. I want to keep going in that way. I want to keep performing. So tell me what I can do so I can do that more, which means when we're still not really touching the idea of the experience of life. And that's kind of what we come into. Then we're going, okay, so, you want to perform in a certain way, or for whatever reasons. Be clear on what your reasons are. Okay. So don't be delusional enough to think that when you get to that, then you'll be happy. If you can only do that, then you'll be happy. Happiness is potentially traveling along the way with us, or contentment or misery does, right? Because everywhere we go, there we are. So the big picture will be, how can I be present with wherever I am, whether I'm in the pushing or performing or coming back? How can I be a human being in the whole process and not make something count more than other areas in terms of my human experience, right? That would be that lovely integration of the feminine and the masculine, right? Because, we don't want to end up, I had one woman who had, there were a group of people who had been doing their PhDs, and we did an exercise on being present.
Yeah.
Very simple, just sitting down, listening to each other and exploring, what is it being present? What takes us away from being present? What brings us back? How does it feel when we're present? When were you last present? And after this exercise, she started sobbing and she was just inconsolable. It was really, and I thought, wow, that's not normally a very triggering exercise.
Yeah.
And so I just said, what's going on for you? And she said, I'm 45 and I just realized all that I have missed.
Oh.
Right? Because I have just been, my kids, yeah, but I need to get this done. I need to get focus here, focus, and I have been so dead, and life's too short for that, right? Life's here. It's not a trial run.
Oh, it really touches that touches my heart, because one of the things that I experienced was I realized I was in my kitchen and I looked at my husband. I wasn't in a job that was really, it wasn't connected to my passion and my wanting to serve. And I was about to give birth to my son. And I was always on this quest. You mentioned goals before and that it was just not working. I was always on quest to get something done.
Yes.
In this sort of push. Okay, well, when I get this education, when I get my master's, tick. Okay, what's next? When I get to the top of the podium, as a professional athlete, tick. Okay, what's next? And I never was getting there. And I was in this spot of thinking, I don't want to pass that on to my son. I can't keep going. And I'm so appreciative that I had that moment of clarity. And that is, I think that it is emotional. And I did break down like this person who all of a sudden got present, and it put me on a path to, being in conversation with you here now and being on a mission. So it's really powerful what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think it's many of us are caught in that. I certainly know I was, because our culture, that the Western culture is in that. We are born with that paradigm being downloaded around, on your path, be successful. The people who write the books, are the ones who are telling us that. So it leaves us also, if we're more inclined to actually be reflective and not be so focused on do, or we're more about, life's about relationships, then we feel like we're losers, like we're slow, we're not on it, we should be on it. versus, we talked a little bit about, I like that model from Elias Porter that goes, well, we have, some that are more dominant performance focused, some that are more people focused, and some are more process focused, which is the big questions of the why, etc. And we need actually all of them to have a healthy society. We need to value them equally, where we've run amok with freaking doing and performing and success being that. Versus, we don't have many heroes who are great scientists or great thinkers or great lovers. They are the people who've climbed mountains and made $1 million or $1 billion or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah. Our measures of success. And I think as athletes, one of the things that we get really one thing I hear, this is what's really amazing, is like people say, well, I'm not an athlete because, well, I don't go and do the race. I don't need to be in the race anymore, or I used to be an athlete. And this is what's so interesting. And I'm just realizing it's because we value only our athletic selves if we have that goal or that outcome. And so we're right back into that whole orientation of we aren't appreciating the process as much as saying, okay, well, you've got the medal now around your neck. It's so profound and here we are in North America getting into the first race season that we've had in a while after, as we go through the pandemic. And again, this conversation needs to come up does it matter at the end of the day? Does that gold medal, does the time that you get matter, or did it matter what you were in, that seeing who you were connected to matter?
Yeah, the experience. Yeah. I mean, that we are human being playing with being an athlete. We're human being playing with whatever we play with, right? But we're always a human being first.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So you mentioned something else that I want to dive into a little bit further because it was something that really kind of caught me off guard. And you're talking about this feminine and the masculine. And I remember as we were preparing for this interview, I was thinking it was like, we love the push of the crest of the wave, what we can see on the outside. And then, and I love that. It's like in training, we love the high intensity. We want more of that. We want more of the endorphins. And you said, okay, well, so that's the masculine energy. I'm like, well, why does it have to be masculine? And she's like, well, there you go, Tenille. And I shouldn't say what you were saying, but this is exactly where I want you to dive in. It's like, but because we valued more the masculine energy than this feminine energy and not seeing the strength. So can you help us understand what I've just, basically said and help us dive into that whole idea a little bit further?
Yeah. I just think it's such an interesting, and I don't really know the answers. I'm just curious about it, to be honest. So I think, we have the feminine and the masculine. Of course, some women have much more masculine energy than female, etc. So it's neither here nor there in terms of, gender. But it is this thing that the masculine energy is very focused. It's very directional. It's very individual. It's about action, about doing. It's about head. It's about speaking, and versus listening, being, receiving. It's almost like you can see the energy or the positioning of the feminine masculine in the sexual act, right? So you have the penis penetrating, it is the forceful, it is moving forward, and the vagina is receiving, right? It's a different energy. Yeah. Right? So if you're looking at it from that perspective, then you'll have, the listening versus speaking, right? Yeah. Doing versus being, right? And in our culture, we just don't have much appreciation for that, which is much more still, which is about, we tend to clutter it up because we don't want to be with it. We don't know it. It's chaotic. It's uncertain. It's overwhelming. It's confusing. Right? It's also absolutely glorious if we dare to go there, but we're not really sure of it, I don't think, right? It brings us into vulnerability. It brings us into Yeah, confusion. So whereas the other is, I've got it. I was focused on that. I got there. Now we can see it. It's tangible. It's, and it makes us feel a little bit safer, I think, in some ways, but also the poorer for it, right? Because we can't keep being on the high. It's a poorer way of living, if you like. Because the natural balance of things is that I come back in, I go, now it's time to just go. So how was that? And dear body, wasn't I lucky to have that experience, right? That I happen to be living in a system that has the skills, aptitudes, ability to be focused, to have a body that can do it, to have that kind of experience. Because we shouldn't be delusional enough to think, I did it. No, you're just blessed to be in a system that has had downloaded programs that enable you to be able to experience that, right? And that's the wisdom of the feminine. Whereas the masculine will go, I did it. It'll be that, right?
Right. And this is where we find new strength and the recovery. So one of the things we really need to do, or want to take on, or suggested and offered to take on, possibly is a better way of saying it, is as athletes, how do we help us understand maybe where we take this conversation now? So we know as athletes, we have that push. We want to, and we now see value in the recovery, in the retreat, in the receiving, in the vulnerable state of going, oh my goodness, I am really experiencing whatever that emotion might be, that presence, or that feeling. Where do we go now? How do we take this into our athletic self?
Well, I think the first thing is not to clutter it with distractions, right? Because we easily do that. And it's great to do some practical work. It can be really good to vacuum clean or do housework, and that's sort of coming to the ordinary, right? Yeah. There's something really healthy around that. And on a very practical mindfulness level, don't be afraid of it. It's okay if you get some tears of exhaustion or of going, wow, who am I without being performing? Who am I? That's a good question. That's a good question. Who do you want to be? Right? Who are we? We don't know that, but this is what is becoming awake is doing. And that's why when we just make mindfulness a tool for calming down or a tool for still performing, we are really short selling it, because it is a practice of becoming more conscious human beings. That's really what it is, right? And yes, it does help us come down. Yes, it does do those things.
Yeah.
That's really just a small part of it. So,
sorry. What I just had a quick question though. When I wanted to make sure that we all know, when we say performing, I want to make sure that we understand, and what are the messages that we're getting ourselves or giving ourselves that be like, no, that is you performing. Like, how do we even become aware that performing doesn't just mean like, I am goal oriented, I'm going to go after that. It also means more than that. So it's like noticing that, yes, you're in performance, get it done, do this. Are there things that we can understand a little bit more about what that even looks like before we go into the next stage? Does that answer that question?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think we can look to Paul Gilbert for his framing of this. So he talks about 3 emotional regulation systems, that we're always operating in one of the 3. So the first one is a threat. And of course, the other thing is to also think about when we're operating in threat or the extreme sympathetic from a perspective of fear, then our muscles are simply focused on protection. They're not going to be performing as well as they could. So I think that's really just a little thing that I think I should have probably mentioned earlier, but it's really important to why we want to get connected with the body. So we know, is it in some level of protection mode, in which case I will not be performing the way I potentially could.
Right.
So that's a little.
Yeah. You keep talking about safety and this feeling of safety.
Yeah.
That's the connection there. Yeah.
Yes. And the thing is, it's not a rational thing. It's a body thing. So if you've had trauma, or let's say that, as a little human, you were told a few times, or you had an experience of when you succeeded, straight away after there was a risk of exclusion, that some people bullied you, for instance, let's say that. That means you're potentially going to see a performance, a race or whatever it might be, as a threat, right? So that means your body, because your body only has two modes. It is either in I'm safe and everything's okay, or there's a threat, right? That means your body's going to go, and it will not be performing as well as you can. So that's another way that you can use mindfulness, is to undo some of those limiting beliefs that we have stored. They are stored in the body. They are not cognitive. You cannot touch them with a cognitive process. They are held in the body because the language of the reactive of our past is the language of the body. So there has to be undone there. That's why mindfulness starts with mindfulness of the body. Anyway, let's come back to your question. Yeah. So that was so threat, and then drive, and then connected, contented. He talks about, in fact, we're always in one of these three systems, and they are exclusive. They're mutually exclusive. So if we're in threat, it's all about me. It's about me getting out of the way, or hiding, or whatever I need to do to survive, right?
Yeah.
In the drive, which is the darling of the capitalistic Western model way of seeing things. Yeah. In that, I have a focus on me and my task, and that's the one we applaud, right?
Yes.
Me and my task, me and my task. That means I see other humans as you're either helping me get to where I want to get to, or you're in my way, right? I'm in a bind. So whether I am cleaning my saucepans at home and I'm going, just need to get this one done, and then it's the next one, then I'm still in drive. Or I talk to you and I go, okay, let's get you, so can I get to the next thing?
Yeah.
Many of us live our whole lives in drive, right? Mm-hmm. And then we have to have a few wines to settle down at night to sort of come into, now I don't care that much, right?
I'm such a driver. Yeah. You're calling me out. Right. Yeah.
And the point is, in drive, there's not a strong relational, we call it affiliate focus. We're just not, we don't really see big picture. We don't really see long-term consequences. It's here and me and now and my task. And other people are either sort of, useful or, not. Okay. Whereas in the connected, contented system, we have a full capacity online. We're in the parasympathetic. Yeah. We listen with our hearts. We care. We're curious about the other. Right? Yeah. So it's useful to be aware that if we're going, okay, we've performed, let's say we perform in drive, which is most likely, right? How do I come back to actually loving my family, to loving all the other people on the road, to actually feeling it, to appreciating the beauty? Because when you're appreciating, when you're loving, you're in that, and your system, for the sake of your mental health and emotion and physical health, needs that.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to understand on now, it's not one or the other, because I'm just like, oh yeah, that's me too. Like I'm totally being self-centered here. I'm just like, but I'm trying to understand it in terms of like, I say, oh yeah, you're calling me out in drive, but then it's like, but no, one of my missions is to lift others up. And then I come into this thinking of finite versus infinite. And this, if you're finite focused, then it goes back to what you said, even like at the beginning of our talk, and talking about competitiveness, and it's either me or you. And that drive kind of gets in there. And that's, again, coming into athlete, it's either me or you, and, only one of us is going to win. But this other way of being is something really different that you're talking about. And so it's recognizing these three ways of being, but I guess I'm asking, this is my question. It's not one or the other. Sometimes it's a bits of this, and we show up in different ways, and it's about noticing where are we at? Is that how you kind of come into, how do we, again, because it's always about noticing, like, what is it? What am I doing?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, we do tend to, they are actually separate circuits.
Okay.
If you like.
Okay.
So, but you can have like let's say you've just rushed to get to here, right?
Yeah.
And then as soon as you sit down and you see, oh, I'm talking to, let's say me, and we had that nice connection, you go, oh, I liked her, that was nice. And then your system will be coming into that automatically.
Yeah.
Right. Then you have to then just notice when you come into distractedness and come back. So you know, it is an ongoing kind of taming the beast, really, in coming into, this is how I want to show up. Right. Mm-hmm. So you would have had those insights at some point when you were in the affiliate, in the connected contented. You would have had that, oh, I want to support. That's what I want to do. That feels so good, right? That comes from that. But then sometimes you dip into your drive in making it happen still.
Right.
I'd say you'd be dancing in between. We need them all. There's nothing, none of them are good or bad. The problem is just that if we tend to just live and drive, there's a huge cost.
Yeah.
Right. It's not sustainable. And really, you know, we tend to look at it from, you know, there's this model that looks at we exploit, deplete, sustain, and then actually regenerate. And we want to regenerate because that's when we get ideas like the one you had to go, I want to do that. That comes from, you cannot get that from drive. You know, because it's reactive. It's sitting in the reactive system, meaning you'll only be accessing pretty much the worn neural pathways.
Yeah.
Right. It's a fast track using Kahneman's work. Around fast track and slow track. And you want the slow track to kind of access that, to get new ideas, new insights happening. And that is part of that happens with listening, through listening, right? Really listening to you and going, what is this girl saying? What is her perspective? And allowing that to kind of go into mine. And so there, through that dance, we start to come up with new things.
It's amazing. One of the things that is striking me is that as we go through things, and I mean, this can be as athletes, we want to think about like, what's the right way of training? How do I need to eat? What's the best way to recover? And we're looking for these, like, I want to know how to do the push. And then, you know, like I want more masculine energy. I want this. It's binary. It's this or that. It's, you know, I want to know which system am I in the drive? Am I going to be in here? And what I'm hearing from you is that I want to put a moral judgment on things. Like, you know, like my immediate reaction is like, I want to say, oh, well, this must be better than that. Drive is one thing, whereas that, and what you're opening me up to, and I hope to the listeners as well, is like, we're all of these things. That's what you just said, is like, we all have these things.
Yes, that's right. We all do.
Appreciating and seeing them for where we are within them. And that is mindfulness. Is that it?
Yeah, that's one element of it. It's useful to have these frameworks to go, you know, for instance, if I know I'm in threat, going, okay, so then there isn't actually a real danger, which is most of the time, right? If there is, it's a different matter. But if there's no real danger, but I've been triggered by something, or I've rushed around too much, or something's just fallen down in front of me, and then I can go, oh, I just need to calm the system down, right? That's my responsibility, rather than just run with it. I go, okay, so for me, because like I said before, the foundation of mindfulness is mindfulness of the body. Right? It's not a cognitive process. It starts with the body, because that's where your threat reaction starts first, right? Then thinking goes, I wonder what's going on. Like, you know, if there's a loud noise, what happens?
Yeah.
You jump. You don't go, oh my goodness, that's a loud noise, now I'm going to jump, right? The body does it first, does it super fast, 0.56 of a second before cognitive thought. So that also means that if we start to connect with the body, which is where we start with mindfulness, we start to listen to the language of the body. And then we start to take it as our primary responsibility to be in alliance with that, to soothe it, to, if you like, hold hands in friendship with the body, right? So that when the body is anxious, we go, oh, dear body, putting the hand over the heart and just going, dear body, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right? If we're too much in drive, then going, okay, we need to just go out and go for a little walk and go, it's okay. Calm down. Let's calm down. It's okay. It's okay. Right. And there's some very specific little things you can do. like the dear body, which is the hand, but also just, focusing on the breath and longer out breath and in breath. Very sort of simple little techniques of just coming into the parasympathetic, the rest and digest, out of threat, if you like, but depending on the framework we're looking at.
Right. Right.
And then, of course, what also works is when you're doing your minimum 10 minutes a day of mindfulness practice, and whether you do attention training, body scan, loving kindness meditation. I have lots of them on my website and a whole lot around the dear body, because in my experience, the dear body is so underutilized and much more powerful than a cognitive thing that sits out here. So coming into that and doing them for 10 minutes a day means you're going to have faster come down from the reactive. You're going to not have as many things trigger you. You're going to open the window to noticing yourself and your emotions much more, so that you can more emotionally regulate. Because it's a lot of the time that the threat is activated through emotions. I shouldn't have said that. I can't believe I said that. Why did I say that to me? That kind of thing. Yeah. Whereas you notice that, and you earlier on can calm yourself down, saving yourself, in effect, a lot of misery, right?
Absolutely. Wow. You have a saying, your body being breathed, and it just keeps on coming up for me as you're talking. It's just like, I love that saying. It's such a powerful way, or I don't know how, it's this, it's body being breathed is really,
it's beautiful, isn't it?
It is. That's really right. Beautiful.
Yeah, because it takes the self out of it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not breathing. The body is being breathed. And that means all I can do is, or the consciousness is sitting on the sidelines, observe this organism with kindness and compassion as it's being breathed, as it's recovering, as it's performing, right? So as a performer, or athlete, or, anyone who pushes the body, if you like, right? My one thing would be start to collaborate with it in kindness, rather than see it as a mechanism, as something that has to be managed and pushed and then dealt with, right? As a naughty employee. Bring it back into, into kindness, like it was your most precious child, right? Would you treat it then?
It's really, I mean, if we slow down and really hear what you're saying, it's really powerful, right? It's really powerful in thinking of, okay, so when I'm getting twisted in my tornado of activity, or if I'm really, as athletes in perimenopause and beyond, feeling experiences, having symptoms, wanting to fix it, do the right thing, eat the right thing, train the right way. If I only could beat it into submission, and that what you're suggesting, where you're coming to us, and I'm going to ask you if you have, to close in, what do you really want to leave us with? But if we just take that, what you just said, kindness, compassion, moment, breathe in from the body out, then we will have a whole new experience of, you also talked earlier about being, letting the reactive go and being more responsive. I mean, this is something else that you talk about within your work. And yeah, it's really powerful. I thank you so much for bringing so many of these concepts up for us to take hold of.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a pleasure. And I think that, when we hear some of this, like, I can't tell you how often I hear from, whether that be, working mums or executives or teachers or whatever, going, oh, that dear body, I can't tell you how often it saves me. It just brings me home. Right?
This home, this safety, this connection.
Yes,
and to believe this is home. And when we are, recovery is where we strengthen. We know that. And yet we struggle to get there. But when, like what you're encouraging is to come into, dear body, you're safe, you're home. It's such a beautiful and embracing, lovely concept.
Yes. And it's an anchor point for life, right? Where we get lost and we can always just come back to that. Dear body, dear body. And in that, we're connected. We're in the connected, contented. We're in the parasympathetic. As soon as you do that, and the more you do it, the faster you'll see it. You'll have it happen. It's even, in my experience, more powerful than just doing the breath. Because if you're sitting and you're really anxious or overwhelmed, you're going, breathe. It feels not firm enough, if you like. Whereas if you're really overwhelmed, you put your hand and you put it on firmly over the heart and you go, dear body, and just notice the warmth between the hand and the body. You go, dear body, I've got you. And then you come into the breath. It'll get you there like that.
Okay, so for the athletes that are listening, if you do any interval training, this is what I challenge everybody to do. So you've just done a hard interval. We were doing this with the element athletes, the team element, and we were on the bike yesterday. I can just see this. This is totally what I'm going to do in spin class in the next the next ones. And we're going to finish our interval. We're going to do the push, and then immediately we're going to sit up, or when we feel like we're ready. And I'm going to encourage people to come in and say, dear body, thank you. Let's breathe through it when we're ready, but come center and actually see the physiological shift that we're able to create, because we all are, we're wearing our heart rate monitors, mine as well. Can you and it will be, I believe it'll be truly profound. Well, this is so cool. All right. So is there,
can I just say one thing? So
yes.
if you're going to do that, then it's really lovely to go, before you even say thank you, you go, dear body, what's happening? So you're tuning into what are the body sensations.
Right.
Just tune in with that first, right? And then go, oh, I so appreciate you, dear body, right? So taking a moment to just go, where are you at? So the meeting first before the appreciation.
Yes, it's perfect, because again, it's coming into the meeting is saying, you're still safe. Because we tend to not, well, what are we encouraged to do? We want to have the intensity. We want to go there because we are trying to keep our muscles. We want to stay strong. And it's hard to go there. We as we age, we start to fear that push sometimes, not everybody, but that it becomes a bit more scary. And so if we recognize and connect to, wow, oh yeah, you're still going. It's just you're still there.
Noticeable. How does it, the heart's pounding. Okay. What else is happening? I can feel the surge of the blood. I can feel this perhaps even a little bit lighter than normal. Okay. You can feel that, to be reductionistic, when the more we are aware of what's happening in the body, the more we also cultivating empathy automatically. Right? Introception is that's where we start, being aware of what's happening. And that means next time when you're out with, having dinner with your husband and you get triggered, rather than go, you go, oh, I noticed that. I'm going to zip it and just notice the sensations, breathe, and it'll pass. And then you save yourself that misery. Right?
And get curious, why did I just have that major reaction? Is this really the story? Is this the right story? And we can go into that. But anyway, yeah, so powerful. I do have one more final question. Oh, sorry, okay, so what a phenomenal conversation we've had. I've loved it, but I have one more question that I have for you. But before that, I wanted to ask you, or I'm so excited about sharing this with all of our listeners. So you are in the process of finishing your book, and it's called Dear Body.
Yes. Dear Body, the well within.
The well within. So as a listener, for coming into this series, you are giving us a gift. And do you want to just tell people a little bit about this book and what you are providing to us through the link?
Yes. So what I would like to offer is the first chapter of the book to anyone who's interested. And the book is really about our relationship with the body and the consequences when we live and disconnect from it, and the benefits and the gifts when we connect with it and how to connect with it. And then it's specifically diving into some areas around leadership, around parenting, around stress, and relationships at the end of it, applying some of those things. So that's it. I'm very excited about it because, the feedback I get all the time It doesn't matter, like I said before, who it is that the dear body is the anchor point that makes, that has given them the most profound tools and insight. And that's what the Buddha said as well. I mean, I'm not the first one. He promised everything, from just mindfulness of the body.
It's so powerful, and it's wonderful to hear different ways of coming into connection with it. That's what I think, like, we all have to find our way, and
yes,
more, there will be some listeners that it'll just be like, that's exactly connection. And that's why we have series like this, to start to understand, well, what is going to resonate with you and where can you come into this conversation? All right, my final question is this. Was there one moment or one experience that you had that brought you into this passion of, now, educating and creating programs and writing a book, and in your desire to share the mindfulness? Do you have a moment?
I actually have many moments, to be honest. Okay. And I think each moment was just deepening it. But I have a quick story that I think it sticks in my mind as being a turning point, where I shifted from the general mindfulness to mindfulness of the body in just awe of what was occurring. So I was doing actually a corporate job around mapping a conflict in an organization. And I had interviewed everybody, and then I came back to them 3 months later. Now, a particular person was a 36-year-old healthy male. And when I saw him again, he had drug-induced Parkinson's. So he was shaking, very, very, very much. He was so unwell. He had been in a psych ward for depression. And he's sitting there shaking, and I'm supposed to ask him these questions. And I thought, this is kind of crazy. You can't just ignore where the body's at, right?
Yeah.
And so even though this was many years ago and it was quite early, I thought, I'm going to just go out on a limb here. And so, darling, let's just close the eyes. Let's just close the eyes and let's just come into the dear body. So just take a few moments and just put the hand over the heart and just go, dear body. And then reassure the body, dear body, I'm listening. I hear your language. And with that, he started to sob. He just, that was the first thing. And then we just went into, now let's be curious around, where does the shaking start? And he said, it's in the thighs. Okay, more on the left or the right? The left. And then as we're going through, we're just going, dear body, it's okay. We're safe. It's okay. It's okay. We just go through and soothe and soothe. And within 5-10 minutes, he was sitting completely still. That to me was one of those, I went, wow, this is the way to go. This is the way to go. So
if we hear this as people think about their racing, or if they're coming into a hard workout, or they're thinking, what we need to do is this is exactly where so many of us come into challenge or into a stressful situation. And we can be excited about a situation like a race or an event or something, and yet have this sort of like, how do I come down? How do I come down? And
yeah. And also one more point I think that's really important is that, what we sometimes do with the down is that it's a bit like the diet binge diet. What do you call it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The binge diet cycle, right. Whatever.
Binge eating? Like when you just start eating tons?
Yeah, that's right. So, you might be very, very strict when you're leading up to a performance around your diet. And then when you come off, flop, in comes all the junk, right? Or the wine or whatever.
Right.
So what is missing, and because one of the areas I've worked a lot with is mindful eating, and the whole thing around actually dieting and eating, healthy. And that's where the dear body was born out of, that notion. But that is that, if we go into the supermarket and we're shopping and we have our little basket there and we're saying, dear body, what do we need? You cannot put junk in the basket, right? So that you become more stable in the way, because the relationship with the body is your constant. And that means you don't get, oh, well, now I need to come down from this. So now I'm going to have junk food now, or, now I have to have that. It's not so one or the other, but actually it's the dear body that is your rotational point, if you like.
Oh, that's so perfect. My goodness. Thank you so much for joining us and for saying yes and for sharing yourself and your expertise and for writing a book. And because it does take time, a lot of patience, a lot of energy. And we all, I'm thrilled that we all here in this series get to benefit from it. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being so wonderfully curious and engaged. It's wonderful. I love what you're doing. That's
right. I
so
truly love this. It's so fast. It's so fascinating and fantastic. And I just really feel like we need to have these voices, and we need, as athletes, to understand this push, this pull, this, coming back in, and especially now in perimenopause and beyond, where we have to be a whole lot of gentle, a whole lot of gentle. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And also where, if we're just symptom suppressing, we're missing the point, because we want to be able to say, so what is your new voice? The world needs the new voice of the postmenopausal women, right? Yep.
Well, let's leave it there. That's so perfect. What is your new voice? Let's take it on. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.